In Susa, a queen begins to rise and roar. In the 3rd year of Jehoiakim, Nebuchadnezzar king of Babylon laid siege to Jerusalem. Among those taken captive was a young woman named Esther, an orphan raised by her cousin Mordecai. She lived in Susa under Persian rule, her heritage concealed beneath the grandeur of the citadel's shimmering golden towers. The aroma of exotic spices filled the air, a stark contrast to the heavy burden of her hidden identity as one of God's chosen people. As Esther prepared for her royal duties, she was acutely aware of the whispers swirling through the court, the ominous murmurs of Haman's malevolence, the king's chief advisor, who sought to annihilate the Jewish community. Yet, hidden from the eyes of the world, she bore a truth so powerful that it sparked within her a deep sense of urgency. Who knows whether you have not come to the kingdom for such a time as this? Mordecai's words echoed in her heart, a divine nudge urging her to consider her place within the royal court. The weight of her people's fate pressed heavily upon her spirit. Esther battled within, a tempest of fear and faith raging in her heart. The law of the Persians was unwavering. To approach the king unsummoned was a death sentence. Would she risk her own life to save her people? Time slipped through her fingers like sand, and in the shadows of her soul, God's voice gently prompted her to act. Prayer became the anchor of her resolve. She called upon her brethren to fast and pray, seeking divine favor as she prepared herself to confront the king. Before we continue with this incredible biblical account, I want to make sure you don't miss any of these powerful scripture stories. Click the bell icon and select All Notifications. These biblical narratives have transformed countless lives throughout history. If God's word through this story is blessing you, please like and share with someone who needs to hear about God's faithfulness today. Tell me in the comments, which biblical story has most impacted your faith journey? I'm always amazed how God's word speaks to hearts across generations. Now let's continue with what the Lord did next. With her heart pounding like a war drum, adorned in her royal attire, Esther stepped into the grand hall. The silence of the royal court enveloped her, a blanket thick with tension. The king sat upon his majestic throne, majesty and menace intertwining in his countenance. As she stood before him, her voice quivered like a fragile flame, yet she pressed onward, revealing her lineage and the plight of her people. If I have found favor in your sight, O king, let my life be granted me, and my people. The air crackled with tension, the room heavy with unspoken dread. Her plea pierced the atmosphere, an echo of her heart's cry, not merely for individual safety but for the survival of her entire nation. In this moment, shadows of Haman's treachery loomed large, threatening to snuff out the light of hope. Yet Esther, emboldened, embodied the heart of a faithful servant drawn toward an unseen promise. As spiritual warfare raged within and without, Esther's courage shimmered like a beacon amidst the darkness, leaving the outcome shrouded in divine mystery. The next unfolding was imminent, and the battle between good and evil had only begun. Would Esther's brave heart lead to salvation, or would the darkness that sought to engulf her people ultimately prevail? The fate of the Jewish nation and the movement of God's redemptive plan were yet to be revealed in his perfect timing. And it came to pass that King Ahasuerus looked upon Esther, and while the tension in the hall remained palpable, he beheld her beauty and grace, and his heart was stirred. The king extended his golden scepter toward her, granting her the favor she sought. "What is your request, Queen Esther?" "It shall be given to you, even to half of my kingdom." Esther, emboldened by the king's gesture, recognized the moment as a hinge upon which history turned. Yet her heart remained weighted with the urgent burden of her people. "My lord, if it please the king, let him and Haman come today to a banquet that I have prepared for them." She dared not reveal the depth of her soul's plea just yet, for the Lord's timing was delicate. As a fragile thread spun by the weaver, the king, intrigued, commanded that Haman be summoned, and they both came to the feast that Esther had prepared. As they reclined at the table, the aroma of rich delicacies filled the room, but the air was thick with unspoken concerns. With bated breath, Esther began to speak, her words carefully chosen, yet trembling with anticipation. "This is my desire, if I have found favor in your sight, grant me my life and the lives of my people." At these words, the king's brow furrowed in confusion. Who dares to threaten my queen? The weight of the question hovered, illuminating the dark shadow of Haman lurking at the feast. Haman's heart raced, for he could sense the shifting tide. The banquet that was meant to be a celebration now became a court of judgment. Esther raised her voice, an adversary and an enemy, this wicked Haman. He has plotted against my people to destroy us all. The room erupted in gasps as the truth spilled forth like the waters of a dam burst under pressure. The king's righteous anger blazed. What is this treachery? Who plotted such evil against my queen and her people? Haman's face blanched, fear gripping him as he perceived the peril he faced. He realized too late that he had underestimated Esther's resolve and the mighty hand of Providence at work through her. Esther continued, revealing the decree that Haman had written, a decree sealed with the king's own ring, calling for the annihilation of the Jews. Your faithful servant, Haman, has forged a plot of destruction, and I stand here, a woman of my people, pleading for their deliverance. The tension shifted dramatically, and even the air thickened as the fate of Haman now hung in balance. The king, furious, rose from the table and stormed into the garden. In the stillness that followed, Esther stood with her heart racing and her eyes fixed upon Haman, who had fallen before her to beg for mercy. Do not let this evil man remain unpunished, dear king, his treachery knows no bounds, her heart cried out, drawing upon the strength of the Almighty. Moments stretched into eternity, and the divine orchestration of events began to unfold before them, leading toward a confrontation that would echo through the annals of history. The king returned, his wrath kindled. Hang Haman on the gallows he prepared for Mordecai, he declared with the authority of a sovereign chosen by God. Haman was led away to meet his fate. A hush enveloped the hall, for the triumph of good over evil resounded within the very heart of Susa. Esther's bravery unveiled a divine purpose, foreshadowing a greater deliverance that was yet to be realized. But what lay ahead for Esther and her people? The cosmic battle between good and evil was intensifying, revealing only glimpses of God's sovereign plan. The liberation of the Jewish nation stood at the precipice, promising a ripple of hope across generations yet to come. For such a time as this, echoed through the valleys of time, as the tapestry of destiny continued to weave their story within God's grand design. And it came to pass that Haman was led away, a heavy silence descending upon the hall of the king. The murmurs of the courtiers echoed in the chambers, filled with a mixture of awe and dread, for they had witnessed the swift judgment of the king upon the wickedness that had sought to destroy the innocent. Esther watched as Haman disappeared from view, her heart both relieved and burdened. She had spoken bravely, and yet her people were still in peril, for the decree against them had been issued and remained unrevoked. The fate of her nation still hung precariously in the balance, like a slender thread beneath the weight of impending doom. Turning her gaze to the king, whose fury had now given way to contemplation, she approached him again with a heart full of faith and trepidation. My lord, though Haman is gone, the decree he commanded still looms over us. A mandate of death awaits your loyal subjects. Ahasuerus looked upon Esther, his queen, and in his eyes, she saw the flicker of understanding. His heart was moved by her plight, and in that moment of vulnerability, she knelt before him. If I have found favor in your sight, O king, let it be written that my people be spared. For they are loyal, and they seek only peace and refuge in your land. The king's countenance softened, but the law of the Medes and Persians could not be altered. He pondered this, and an idea struck him. What shall be done, then, to reverse the wicked decree that has been set? Shall we not write a new edict, one that shall grant the Jews the right to defend themselves? Esther arose with hope igniting the depths of her soul. Indeed, my lord. Let the decree be made known to all the provinces, that the Jews may gather strength and resist those who seek their lives. Ahasuerus nodded solemnly and called his scribes to inscribe a new edict bearing his seal. He commanded it to be sent forth, swift as the wind, upon the wings of royal messengers, traversing the vast reaches of his dominion. The decree proclaimed the right of the Jews to gather and fight for their lives and their families. It was a clarion call of hope amidst despair, a divine invitation to stand boldly against the tide threatening to overwhelm them. As the news spread throughout the land, courage stirred in the hearts of the Jewish people. For the first time, a flicker of joy ignited within their hearts, and shouts of deliverance were heard in the streets. They began to gather, united in purpose, ready to rise against their adversaries, yet Esther knew that the battle was only beginning. As she stood within the palace walls, reflecting on the goodness of God, a shadow fell over the future. Though Haman was vanquished, other foes lurked, eager to extinguish the light that had begun to blossom. In the silence of night, Esther offered fervent prayers, seeking guidance, interceding for her people. "O Lord," she pleaded, "you have delivered us thus far. May your hand continue to lead us, for you are our refuge and strength. Amidst the enemy's schemes, may your will be done." As she prayed, the heavens seemed to echo her supplications, and the realization dawned that God's sovereign plan was still unfolding, shrouded in mystery and power. What would become of her people? For as Esther's faith remained steadfast, she sensed a deeper unfolding, a divine plot that would ripple through the ages. The threads of fate were being woven into a fabric of redemption, hinting at a promise that was yet to come. For greater deliverance awaited, veiled beneath the shadows of destiny, ready to burst forth in triumphant revelation. And it came to pass, in the days of Haman's downfall, that the celebration among the Jews grew ever louder, like a joyous uprising fueled by the promise of deliverance. Hearts that had once been filled with anguish now rang with the hope of salvation, a glorious echo reverberating through the streets of Shushan. But unknown to them, their destiny was still intertwined with shadows lurking in the hearts of those who did not wish them well. As those loyal to Haman whispered their discontent, plotting in secret, word of the royal edict reached all corners of the Persian Empire. The Jews gathered in earnest, fortified by faith and driven by righteous indignation. Clans assembled, armed with both swords and spirit, ready to stand against the tide of death that had threatened to swallow them. Behold, Esther spoke unto her people, who came forth from every province, "The Lord our God has heard our cries. We shall not be overcome. Gather yourselves and remember the promises of our forefathers. For it is written, the Lord your God is he who goes with you to fight for you against your enemies, to give you the victory." Deuteronomy 20 verse 4. And they echoed her exhortation, voices rising like a great wave of spirit and purpose, "We shall stand together. We shall not fear." Yet in the royal court, the king continued to ponder the state of the realm, casting furtive glances at his queen. Ahasuerus, though moved by Esther's plea, felt an unsettling ache within him. Was he, the king, indeed a protector, or merely a pawn in the vast game of providence? In those sleepless nights, the king turned to the chroniclers of his reign, searching in the sacred texts for wisdom. It was then that he stumbled upon the records of a man named Mordecai, who had uncovered a plot against his life but had never been rewarded for his loyalty. "What honor," he asked, "has been bestowed upon this man?" His servants, puzzled but obedient, replied, "None, O king." At that moment, the king was filled with righteous indignation and called for Mordecai to be summoned. "Let him be exalted," the king declared. "For he is a true servant of the realm, a beacon of faith amidst despair." And behold, as Mordecai was brought forth, the king commanded he be dressed in royal robes and led around the city on horseback, heralding a proclamation of his valor. "Thus shall it be done to the man whom the king delights to honor." A sweet irony danced in the air, for the very chief minister that sought to destroy the Jews had been vanquished, while Mordecai was raised as a symbol of hope. As the day of conflict approached, the battle lines were drawn. Tension mounted within the empire as adversaries plotted against the Jews, yet Esther's heart remained unwavering. In her spirit, she knew that a far grander purpose was at work. Less than merely surviving, they were destined for a pivotal moment in the great tapestry of God's redemptive narrative. "Lord," she prayed, looking heavenward, "we stand ready. We yield not unto fear, for you are the author of this story. Make known your great providence, as you have promised my fathers. Show us that what the enemy intends for evil you will turn for good." And as she prayed, the winds whispered a promise, as though the very heavens themselves awaited the unfolding of God's master plan. For Esther, Mordecai, and the gathering multitude stood on the precipice of transformation, where shadows of death could yield to the light of salvation, the hour was drawing near when the true victory was about to be revealed, a deliverance that would ripple far beyond the confines of Shushan, touching the foundations of faith and renewing hope throughout all generations. For intertwined with the fate of a nation was a covenant secured by the promise of the Almighty, and it was said, "A remnant shall return." Thus the curtain of destiny was about to rise, and the world would witness the power of God's unwavering hand. And now, in the days preceding the great conflict, the air was thick with anticipation and fear. The streets of Shushan buzzed with impassioned dialogue as whispers of rebellion danced from ear to ear among the Jews. Gathering in their homes, they lifted their voices in prayer and supplication, beseeching the Almighty for strength and fortitude. "Almighty God," they cried out, "you who led our ancestors through the waters of the sea, deliver us from the hands of those who seek our destruction. For your name is great among the nations, and your promise stands firm for those who trust in you." Meanwhile, Esther, robed in humility yet emboldened by the Spirit, sought the counsel of Mordecai. "What shall we do, my uncle?" she implored, the weight of the decree pressing heavily upon her heart. "For our people are facing annihilation. Should I approach the king once more, perhaps to plead for mercy?" Mordecai, his heart steadfast, answered with wisdom that spanned the ages. "Do not think, my dear Esther, that you shall escape in the king's palace more than all the Jews. For if you remain completely silent at this time, relief and deliverance will arise for the Jews from another place, but you and your father's house will perish. Yet who knows whether you have come to the kingdom for such a time as this?" Esther 4 verses 13-14. Esther was moved by his words and understood the providence of God that had placed her in such a pivotal role. "Gather all the Jews who are present in Shushan," she commanded, "and fast for me. Do not eat or drink for 3 days, night or day. My maids and I will likewise fast, and so I will go to the king, though it is against the law. And if I perish, I perish." With this resolve, Esther prepared her heart. The kingdom's fate rested upon her obedience. Yet in this divine moment, the hand of God was already orchestrating the hearts of men. Ahasuerus, in his palace, wrestled in his spirit, having been stirred by the miracles unfolding around him. Indeed, the sovereign Lord moved chess pieces across the board of history, positioning enemies and allies in their destined places. On the third day, Esther adorned herself in royal garments, her heart burdened yet aflame with faith. With a steadied breath, she approached the king's court, an image of courage adorned in grace. The guards and courtiers noticed her presence, and as she entered the throne room, Ahasuerus raised his eyes to see her beauty, and a deep yearning blessed his heart. "What is your request, Queen Esther?" He beckoned, his voice carrying royal authority. "It shall be given to you, up to half the kingdom." With trembling lips and earnest hope, Esther replied, "If it pleases the king, let the king and Haman come today to the banquet that I have prepared for him." And Ahasuerus, intrigued, summoned his favored minister, Haman, to attend the feast where destiny would collide against the fate of an entire people. As the banquet unfolded with laughter and wine, the tension in the air grew palpable. The king leaned toward Esther. "What is your request, my queen?" Esther, gripped by the divine timing that had been set in motion, knew that the moment to unveil her truth had come, yet the battle was far from over. For in the depths of Haman's heart, pride swelled, and dark intentions lingered. The trap was being laid, the plot twisted, as God's sovereign plan began to emerge. For even in peril, when the enemies of God's people plotted against the chosen, would he not rise mightily on their behalf? Thus was the stage set for a revelation so grand that all who watched would know that the Lord does not forsake his own, proving that in every season, evil's scheme is but a thread in his tapestry of redemption. The world awaited the conclusion of this divine orchestration, for the unfolding glory of God's purpose was yet to be revealed, a promise that from ashes, hope would indeed arise. And it came to pass, as the laughter of the banquet filled the air, that Esther, her heart racing with purpose, recognized that the moment was at hand for her to reveal the truth hidden in shadows. She looked upon Ahasuerus, who awaited her words with eager eyes, and took a deep breath, steadying her spirit. "My king," she began, her voice a melody of strength and vulnerability intertwined. If I have found favor in your sight, and if it pleases the king, let my life be given me at my petition, and my people at my request. For we are sold, I and my people, to be destroyed, to be slain, and to perish. Esther 7 verse 3, the words, like an arrow shot from the bow, pierced through the air, striking the heart of Ahasuerus. A silence fell upon the hall, as though all creation paused to hear the weight of her declaration. The king's brow furrowed, confusion and anger battling for dominance in his noble visage. Who is he, and where is he, who would presume in his heart to do such a thing? Ahasuerus demanded, rising from his throne, his voice echoing through the palace, filled with the authority and wrath of a king betrayed. Esther pointed toward Haman, the very one who had dined at the table with them, who had plotted the destruction of her people. This wicked Haman. He is the adversary and enemy, the one who sought to bring down the righteous. Haman's face drained of color, and dread gripped him as the king turned his gaze upon him, the weight of all the condemnation resting unrelentingly upon his crown. The courtiers gasped, their eyes darting between the king and the man they once regarded with favor. Then, like the dawn breaking over the darkness, the memory of the gallows Haman had constructed for Mordecai returned to Ahasuerus. Let gallows be made, 50 cubits high, and let him be hanged upon them. Esther 7 verse 9, as Haman's fate was sealed, the king's outrage spread through the palace, and divine justice unfolded as though orchestrated by an unseen hand. The very machinery of fate that had threatened the Jews was now turning upon the head of their accuser. Meanwhile, on the street of Shushan, the cries of the people were heard, echoing through every home as fear began to mingle with the slightest tendril of hope. Mordecai sat at the king's gate, where news of the unfolding events began to seep into his ears. With each whisper, the possibility of deliverance brightened the shadows that had loomed so grimly over the Jewish community. The fasts of Esther and her people had not gone unheard, their hearts united in supplication drew near to the throne of heaven. Thus, as Haman was taken away in chains, a new decree was soon to be dictated by Ahasuerus, a decree that would rise as a beacon of light in a time of darkness. For, as the king's heart turned, so too did the tide of the battle for God's chosen people, but little did they know, this was merely the beginning of a profound turnaround, for God was yet to unveil his master plan through the trials they faced. Is it not I, the Lord, who saves? But what Esther had yet to comprehend was that God's sovereignty would soon touch every corner of the king's land. The story was far from its end, the promise of a renewed covenant loomed on the horizon, waiting to reveal the grand narrative of hope written through every perilous moment. For even now, as the stage was set for redemption, God's mysterious ways were about to unfold in ways none could foresee. The threads of history, both fragile and strong, wove together a tapestry of divine purpose, one that would echo eternally. And it came to pass that, as darkness conspired against the people of Israel, a great light began to shine forth amid despair. The fate of Haman was sealed, and despair turned to retribution, for the king called for the scribes of the kingdom to inscribe a new decree. A proclamation should be issued, Ahasuerus declared, his voice resonating with authority. In the name of the king, let it be known that the Jews shall defend themselves against any who rise to slay them. They shall be empowered on the 13th day of the month of Adar. And great was the rejoicing among the Jewish people, for they recognized that the Lord had turned their mourning into joy. Esther 8 verse 16. News spread swiftly through Shushan, and the hearts of those who were once fearful were filled with courage. As the sun set that day, the echoes of praise began to rise from every corner of the land, for deliverance had drawn near, and the heroism of Esther inspired them anew. Deep in the heart of the capital, Mordecai emerged from the gates as a man transformed. Clothed in royal robes of blue and white, with a crown of gold upon his head, he ventured into the city, where men's eyes were drawn to him, as they recognized the favor that the Lord had granted. This day is one of salvation. He proclaimed with a mighty voice, raising his hands high in praise, for our God has seen our plight and heard our cries. The multitude gathered, their hearts unified, and there was a great assembly at the king's gate, a reminder of the providence of God that had led them through trials unseen. Mordecai shared the story of Esther, how she had approached the king with courage, revealing truth amid shadow. We must stand resolute. The hand of the Almighty is upon us, he urged. Even as the celebrations begot hope, Haman's household faced a different fate. Fear and trepidation gripped those who once served him. His wife, Zeresh, and his advisers realized that the tides had turned. If Mordecai is of the Jewish people, you shall not prevail against him, they cautioned, prophesying his demise. But it was too late. The seeds of destruction he had sown began to bear fruit of his own undoing. Esther 6 verse 13. Meanwhile, Esther lingered in her chambers, her heart a tapestry of emotions. The thrill of victory woven with the remembrance of peril, she knelt in prayer, seeking the Lord. O God, how much do I truly grasp the amplitude of your plans for us? Word has spread of deliverance, but what lies ahead in our journey? And as she prayed, a subtle strength filled her spirit, for she sensed that the story was still unfolding. In the hidden realms, God's heart was uniting his people, fortifying them against the day of battle. Divine whispers flowed like rivers, shaping their resolve, as the promise of victory echoed through the land. The day of the 13th of Adar approached, a day set for retribution and justice, where the faithful would rise up as a fierce light against darkness. The banners of Israel waved high, reflecting the splendor of their God. Yet beneath the surface, the threads of greater purpose were weaving. Little did they know, the shadows that lingered were not merely those of Haman, but the very fabric of spiritual warfare, and a confrontation that would reveal the nature of God's covenant love. The hearts of kings were in his hands, their decisions part of a divine chessboard, and the outcome promised more than mere survival. It was an undeniable restoration. Is it not I, the Lord, who orchestrates even the chaos for my glory? The voice of the Almighty resounded in the hearts of the faithful, beckoning them into the fullness of his sovereign plan, a plan that would one day be revealed as the ultimate act of deliverance and grace. And it came to pass, as the 13th day of Adar drew nigh, the stars in their courses began to align with divine intent. A stillness settled over Shushan, a palpable expectancy in the air. As the people prepared for what was ordained, the city thrummed with life. Preparation surged among the Jews, whose spirits soared like eagles above the fray. Mordecai commanded the chiefs and captains of their tribes. Brothers and sisters, today, we gather to reclaim our lives as the Lord has decreed. Let us not lose heart, for in truth he has bound our fate with his everlasting covenant. Esther, adorned in royal raiment and a crown that gleamed as brightly as her hope, emerged from her dwelling and met with the people. The weight of destiny pressed upon her heart, for she understood that this day had been wrought for such a time as this. Esther 4 verse 14. Fear not, she called, a light bursting forth from her countenance, for the Lord fights for us. Shall we not stand boldly with the promise that he is with us? As the sun crested the horizon, casting golden rays over the city, the call to arms surged forth. Dread and anticipation intertwined, for the day promised both peril and potential. The Jewish people had resolved to rise as one beneath the banner of their faith, equipped not only with swords and shields but fortified by the covenant of their forefathers. In the distance, approached the adversaries, those who had gathered in allegiance with Haman, emboldened by their wicked designs. Little did they know, a greater power loomed on the horizon, unseen yet wholly present. Their hearts hardened, blinded by their malevolence, for they failed to see the portent of their undoing, as darkness wrestled with the light. Shall we dwell in uncertainty, or shall we press forward in faith? Mordecai urged, for the Spirit of the Lord stirred within him. Remember the promises spoken through our ancestors, the deliverance from Egypt, the parting of the sea. For he is the same yesterday, today, and forever. As warriors forged by unity, the Jews took up their positions, facing down the very specter of annihilation that loomed over them. Scripture echoed in their spirits, "No weapon formed against you shall prosper," Isaiah 54 verse 17. They clasped their weapons with fervor and prayer, a resolve hardening in their hearts, a tapestry woven of faith, courage, and divine purpose. The battle commenced, and the clash of steel rang out like thunder, reverberating through the heavens. As the two forces met, the tide of battle swayed like the mightiest of rivers. The Lord's favor manifested upon the Jewish people, not merely in their victories, but in the hearts of the onlookers who, struck by wonder, began to question the certainty of their cause. What is this? The God of Israel fights with them. And amid the clash of swords and the cries of war, a deeper truth was unveiled. Lo! Haman's downfall began as those who once walked in his shadow turned against him, revealing the true nature of treachery he had cultivated. Esther 9 verse 12. The wheels of divine justice began turning, and the dark designs of the wicked fell to ruin, yet as the dust settled upon the battlefield, a magnificent revelation lingered in the air, a whisper of hope resonating for the generations to come. He who seeks to harm the Lord's chosen shall find himself ensnared by his own devices. For the hearts of the faithful were stirred to remember that their struggle was not merely against flesh and blood but against the very principalities of evil. Ephesians 6 verse 12. And as their victory unfolded, what many did not perceive was that this was but a mere foreshadowing of the greater deliverance that awaited all men, a divine act of grace yet to be revealed. Thus, as the foundations of faith began to be laid anew, for the faithful were rising, and God's plan of redemption was weaving together the fabric of history, culminating in a promise beyond what their eyes could see. Would they grasp the fullness of his sovereign mystery, and understand how it intertwined with their destiny? Only time would soon reveal. And it came to pass that the sun began its descent upon the horizon, bathing Shushan in hues of crimson and gold, a symbol of blood and glory intertwined. The shouts of triumph hung in the air, but beneath the surface, a solemn awareness gripped the hearts of the victors. Each pulse of the land echoed the enormity of what they had accomplished, a divine orchestration from the heavens that cried out of victory turned from woe to wonder. Mordecai, his countenance glowing with fervor, gathered the people once more. Brothers and sisters, see how the Lord has swept away our enemies before us. It is He who has delivered us with a mighty hand and an outstretched arm. Let us remember this day as a holy observance, a festival of joy and remembrance. The echoes of his voice stirred the crowd, and they began to gather stones and wood, preparing an altar of gratitude. Our lasting joy shall be marked by the feast of Purim, a testament to our survival and a reminder of the unwavering faith that our ancestors held, he proclaimed, as the people cheered in response, their joy ascending as an offering to heaven. Within the palace, Esther, her heart still racing from the battles of the day, retreated into her chamber. Yet, even in solitude, a kindling dread stirred within her soul, for she sensed that this victory was but the start of a much grander narrative. Could it be that the hand of the Lord not only raised me as queen for this deliverance but for an even more profound purpose? She pondered, her fingers tracing the delicate carvings of her royal diadem. As night descended, darkness draped the city like a shroud, but in the spirit realm, a celestial battle raged. The adversaries of the Lord conspired against his chosen people, plotting retribution for their downfall. In the hidden corridors of power, whispers of vengeance unfurled. Their deliverance shall be but momentary, we will gather again, and the curse upon them shall be fulfilled. They vowed, but unbeknownst to them, the whispers of heaven drowned out their threats. The Lord of hosts, unbound by time and space, had already set forth his covenant promises long before the foundations of the earth were laid. His plan not only overshadowed the machinations of men but also prepared the way for an unfathomable act of grace that would resonate far beyond Shushan, and as the dawn beckoned, the allies of Haman forsook their shadows to return to him. Ferociously intent on restoring their fallen leader's legacy, they turned their hearts against the remnant of Israel with renewed fervor, believing blasphemously that they might thwart the purposes of God. In the midst of all this, Mordecai felt the stirring of divine urgency. He called out to the people, "Do not be dismayed. For we shall not rend our garments nor diminish our spirits. The promises of our God are steadfast, and even in this hour of plotting, he shall work wonders among us." As they gathered, hand in hand, they stood as a fortress of faith, casting their gaze upward, seeking the light that pierced through the encroaching cloud of their tribulations. It was here, in that sacred moment, that the scriptures stirred within their hearts, whispering ever so gently, "Though the mountains be shaken and the hills be removed, yet my unfailing love for you will not be shaken." Isaiah 54 verse 10. Thus, the holy assembly resolved to pray and fast, for they understood that they did not wrestle alone. They needed the mighty hand of God more than ever. The air thickened with expectancy, and as they raised their voices, an echo of divine mystery loomed. What if the very trials they faced were the seeds of a much grander testimony waiting to spring forth? And as their prayers ascended like sweet incense, the heavens became charged with promise, preparing for the revelation of God's sovereign plan that transcended even the mightiest of earthly kingdoms. In this, they held fast to their faith. What they did not yet know was that deliverance awaited in ways they could never imagine. And it came to pass, in the unfolding tapestry of destiny, that the days of trial and testing gave way to the grand narrative of redemption. The adversaries of Israel, emboldened by their fleeting victory, rallied together, unaware that they were but players in a divine drama far greater than their own ambitions. The air was thick with expectation as the 13th day of Adar approached, a day marked by heaven for a mighty deliverance. Esther, adorned in her royal garments, walked through the palace with a resolute heart, her spirit intertwined with the fate of her people. She gathered the Jewish community in Shushan, speaking words of encouragement. "Fear not, for the Lord has fought for us. His mighty hand will guide our swords and our hearts." The message spread like wildfire, courage ignited within each heart, emboldened by the conviction that God was with them. On that fateful day, as the sun rose over the city, the Jewish people gathered, not as individuals but as a unified army, declaring their faith as the pillar of their strength. They remembered the words of God that had echoed through their ancestors, "The Lord is a warrior, the Lord is his name," Exodus 15 verse 3. Under the banners of hope, they took their stand, ready to confront the darkness that threatened their very existence. Meanwhile, in the heart of the enemy ranks, confusion began to spread, for even the strongest amongst them trembled at the rumors of the God of Israel fighting alongside his people. Their wicked hearts clouded their judgment, and fear entwined with pride, leading them toward their own ruin. As the battle commenced, the clash of steel met the cries of resolve. It was a fierce struggle, but with each blow of their swords, the Jewish people found strength not only in their weapons but in the prayers that swept through their ranks. "For we do not fight against flesh and blood," Mordecai declared to his kin, "but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms." Ephesians 6 verse 12. Together, they lifted their voices in unison, echoing the words of their forefathers, "For the battle is the Lord's." And it came to pass, as day turned to dusk over the battlefield, the tide surged in favor of the Jews. The hope that had flickered like a fragile candle now blazed like a bonfire, consuming the hearts of their enemies, who fell one by one into chaos. Literal shadows of Haman's treachery dissipated in the brilliant light of divine power, and with each moment that passed, the whispers of the past were silenced by loud triumph. Esther, standing tall amid the fray, witnessed the miraculous unfolding of God's favor. The cries of despair transformed into shouts of victory. And as her faith found its expression, she turned her gaze upon the heavens, where the assembly of angels rejoiced alongside the faithful. "This is the day the Lord has made, let us rejoice and be glad in it," she proclaimed with a heart ablaze. The final conflict exploded with the fervor of heavenly winds, and as darkness gave way to dawn, the dust settled upon the battlefield, revealing the undeniable supremacy of God's will for his chosen people. Haman's vile plans met their end, and a joyous thunder erupted among the survivors, for their God had delivered them from the hand of the oppressor. In the following days, the Jewish people came forth in celebration, as the dawn of a new beginning broke upon them. Mordecai arose with a renewed spirit, leading the people in the establishment of Purim, a festival marked in gratitude for the deliverance they had experienced. "Let this day be a testimony of God's faithfulness," he declared, the sounds of joy and laughter echoing through the streets of Shushan. And so it was written in the annals of history. The tale of Esther and Mordecai became a vivid reminder of the power of faith, courage, and divine intervention. For such a time as this, they had been called, and through their obedience, the faithful witnessed a tapestry of redemption unfold, a picture of God's unwavering love and a promise renewed, the eternal covenant that his people would never truly perish. Thus, it is with gratitude and reverence that generations remember the fervor of that day, when an orphaned girl became a queen who roared against the darkness, bearing witness to the truth that the Lord fights for his people, and his plans prevail. Beloved, now is your moment to embrace the lessons of this remarkable story. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next powerful biblical stories that could transform your life. Leave a like now to help spread God's word through the algorithm, and allow others to hear His truth. Comment below with your spiritual reflections. How has this incredible biblical story impacted your faith journey? And share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to hear about God's unwavering promises and faithfulness. This is the moment to help spread biblical truth. Do it today, for only true believers understand the importance of supporting content that reaches more souls for Christ. Don't wait even one more second.